And the reason that optimism is so adaptive and we see it all across species is because it encourages us to go out into the world and engage. So if you think the world is better than it is, you're going to go off and do more things. And just by doing more things and being out in the world, you minimize your risk of missed opportunity. And that could connect to the idea that creatives, go off into the unknown and try things that haven't been tried before.
I think that if you looked after your diet, sleep, and exercise, it might be able to remove a lot of the issues that you have.
Yeah, exactly. And there's never just one cause for why we are behaving or doing the things that we're doing. Exactly. So it's not just like, oh, I have ADHD, therefore I just do this. Like there's all these factors. And yeah, diet, sleep, exercise, the things that you're around all play into that.
So in your field of work then, how much of that do you have to consider, even in the research?
Yeah, so because the field that I'm in is called computational psychiatry, and the idea about that is a lot of psychiatry in the past has relied on self-reports. So that's if you go to the doctor and you say, I'm feeling a bit sad or I'm feeling a bit anxious, and you fill out a report and it says, how often do you feel sad? How often do you feel anxious? And you tick that. And then from that you get a score and it's like, okay, I think you have depression. I think you have these things. And those methods have helped in one sense because that's our experience in that moment, and we can gain an understanding of the phenomenology of that person when they're doing that survey. But then we're missing so much information about what's happening in the brain for that person and how different things could be causing why they're filling out that survey the way they are. So the idea of computational psychiatry is like, okay, well now we have all these computational methods. We all know we have all this AI, we have large learning models, all these things. So can we use those methods to gain more insights into what's happening for a person? So by leveraging mathematics basically and computation. And the thing that I do is I think about what the brain processes are for a person, and I fit that to a computational model. So just say you might be feeling a little sad one day and you want to know why. Like, why is my brain doing that? And I get you to do a task, and with that task, I fit that to an algorithm and I get a parameter out and it says, oh, well, that's because today you are learning a lot from bad things. So when you go out into the world and you see a bad thing, your cognitive process is like, wow, the world is just full of bad things. And if we just had that reported on a survey, we wouldn't know that's what's causing your symptom in the moment. And also when we do these models, we can look at your behavior in a task, but we can also add in the environments that you're in to understand how that's contributing to how you might be cognitively processing things.
With these surveys, if you're asking someone to give a number between 1 and 5, it's not going to fit in a bell curve, is it?
No.
The tail ends are going to be exacerbated quite a fair bit, right?
100%. And the other thing is there's issues in the moment of, so you're being primed on that question.
Yeah, of course.
So,
yeah.
So what's the thing with that is that if you're asked, you can exaggerate in that moment because it's being primed, and it's like, how are these questions phrased? You know how sometimes questions are phrased in a way that encourage one answer over the other, all these different things. And yet responding on a scale of 1 to 5, those numbers mean different things to different people. We don't all have we don't measure things in the same way.
Yeah, and I guess it also comes down to semantics.
Exactly.
Yeah, because, I think that we have, in the English language, especially now because of the influence of social media, we have very broad definitions of anxiety or happiness, right? Like there's so much nuance in all of those things. Happiness could be joy, pleasure. I don't know if we have a good understanding of how to delineate those things.
No, and I mean all the science on emotion and psychology of emotion is so complex, and we still don't have a good theory of emotion and why we experience the emotions we do and why we label them the way that we do. That's ongoing research. So then to diagnose someone with all these things that, we don't have a clear understanding of. And I'm not saying that these self-reports are bad or wrong or anything. It's just we can use different ways of measurements to get more information.
All right, so listening to your podcast, one of the things that really comes to mind is that there's you speak a lot about good situations, bad situations. My take on that is that a situation is just a situation, right? So when you come in with, because your background is in understanding optimism, and optimism, give us a broad or I guess a succinct definition of what optimism is.
So optimism is a bias where you have expectations about the world that it's better than it really is. So you overestimate the likelihood of good things happening and you underestimate the likelihood of bad things happening.
All right, which means that there is a neutral standard.
In terms of, this is in terms of estimating things accurately.
Yeah.
So the definition I just gave you is how we consider the bias, but what the question you just asked brings up all these things. Okay, well then what is an accurate measurement? And that is a challenging question because also when we're in a room, so we're sitting in this room right now, there's all these different things we can attend to. How do we actually get all that information at once to make a clear judgment? And that's, we don't do that. Our brain can't do that. So we decide, okay, I'm going to attend to you right now. Then I'm like, there's a noise over there. I'm going to attend to that. We don't get all the information at once. So then the question is, well, then how, if you can't ever get an accurate assessment, then why would it be optimism? Because we're always just deciding what we attend to. And so the way we know that we're optimistic is a few ways. One of them is through this task where you actually just expose people to good things, good news, and bad news. And good news in that sense would be, I would say, estimate the likelihood of the chance of you being robbed. And you might say, 30%. And then I say, no, actually, it's 10%. So that is good news. Objectively, we can say it's good not to get robbed. And then you would update your model. So I ask you again, what's your chance of getting robbed? And you say, I think it's 10% now. So you really update your world belief from that good news. If you say your chance of getting robbed is 30%, and then I say, no, actually it's 50%, then I ask you again, if you're optimistic, you say, my chance of getting robbed is 35%. So you update less when you get bad information to good information.
Okay.
So through that's how we know that we update more to good things than bad things, when there is a objective way to update, because that's just percentages.
Isn't it like if you're running late for something and then you get all the red lights? No one imagine that, like, it's the situation is, are there situations that could entirely be objectively good or bad, right? Because here's one. Like the other night, I had to catch a train in the city, and it was running late, which helped. And that, for me, that was a good thing.
Yeah.
For the person that was needing to be somewhere urgently, it wasn't so much a good thing. So it was just more, I guess, like a lot of it is just the framing of a situation. And then there's that, having that predisposition of the lens that you're seeing how an outcome is, right? So when you're saying that when people learn more from good outcomes, as in they're able to shift the way, I guess, like adjust the focus of the lens they see the world.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're saying that's more so from good things than bad things.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I would have thought the opposite, actually.
Well, this is the thing. Lots of people think, I'm so surprised we're optimistic. I thought we were all pessimistic. So another reason that we know a lot about the optimism bias is not just through humans, is through non-human animal work. So every species that has been measured for optimism has been found to be optimistic. Cuttlefish, bees, horses, goats, there's a whole list. And the way they do it in animals, and this might help with this thing of, how do we know things are good? How do we know things are bad? So the way they measure optimism in animals is that the animals learn that one cue is associated with a reward. So just say they use a cue that's a frequency, like a tone, and just say you have a high frequency, and when the animal hears a high frequency, if it's a mouse, they get a sugar pellet, just say. And then when they get a low frequency, they get nothing. So the mouse learns that a high frequency is a good thing and a low frequency is a bad thing. And then the mouse is exposed to something completely in the middle. So a frequency in the middle. So that's the middle tone. And if the mouse is optimistic, which they act when they hear the ambiguous tone as if they're getting a reward. So they're interpreting information that's neutral as good.
Okay.
So
yeah. Okay. So they just have that bias towards.
Yeah. So I feel like, and we can see when animals, you might have an animal model of depression, or you might have an animal in a stressed state. They then change and they interpret that ambiguous information as negative.
Oh, right. So context.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we can do that same task of interpreting the ambiguous information in humans. And there's this really beautiful study that showed that how we interpret that ambiguous information, you can affect that by someone just by reading a sad news story before you do the task. And then you interpret ambiguous thing as bad. Whereas if you were in a neutral condition where you didn't read anything or a neutral story, you still interpret the ambiguous things as good.
Yes. Okay. So the predisposition is to lean towards the good side. Yeah. I think that a lot of the people that I speak with, they have to have more of an optimistic mindset.
Yeah.
Like the people that are sitting in that chair, their inclination is to step into the realm of the unknown, right? They're taking a lot of risk with what they're doing, but putting up the pros up against the cons and have decided that the pros do outweigh the cons. And I was actually thinking that, like, I don't know if that is a predisposition in creative people. And then I arrived at the point that, like, there's actually a lot of creativity that comes out from really dire situations. And yet there's still, like, some of the world's greatest pieces of art have come from really tragic situations, right? And then even so much so that, you know, these artists, you know, that 27 Club, for example, they're broken people that are just so creatively gifted, but the works that they put out has come from a really hurt place. So there's no real optimism in that. And I'm just wondering whether or not there needs to be, not even needs to be, but in the world of creativity, because creativity to me is almost like there's one part which is problem solving, which is an optimistic approach, and another part is just conveying emotions, which is, I guess, a whole spectrum on both sides, right? Positive and negative. But that one might actually just be more from hurt now that I think about it.
So, such a good question. And I have a lot of friends who are artists, as you know, that's how we connected. And I have one friend and he's like, well, we shouldn't all be happy because where will creativity come from if we're all happy and optimistic? And push back against that. And that same thing, well, a lot of art comes from places of sadness and emotion. And I guess the first thing what I'll mention is the function of optimism and why it's good. So I think, and that could connect to some, the idea that creatives, you know, go off into the unknown and try things that haven't been tried before. And the reason that optimism is so adaptive and we see it all across species is because it encourages us to go out into the world and engage. So if you think the world is better than it is, you're going to go off and do more things. And just by doing more things and being out in the world, you minimize your risk of missed opportunity. So a nice example, if we think about health, so if you estimate, so just say going on a run reduces your risk of heart disease by 10%. But if you think, no, it's 50%, you're going to be way more likely to go running. Mm-hmm. And if you do think about all the health things you do, they all add up in the end, and it's better than if you sit at home and doing nothing. If, on the other hand, you have a belief that the world is full of bad things and there's no opportunity, you start to see behaviors like withdrawal and depression, where you're better off just staying at home because home is a safe place where there's no risk of things going wrong. And you'll keep, you can keep going in that state, but you're not expanding and finding more opportunity for reward and all these different things that improve your life. So that's the reason that optimism is adaptive. Another thing I wanted to say is, I'll probably say this a lot, and I hope it's not a cop-out, but the brain is a very complex system. So when I say that we're optimistic and the brain processes things in optimistic lens, it's also doing other things at the same time. And lots of people say, well, what about negativity bias? Like that seems to be something like we can really focus on the negative. And negativity bias also has a function. So if we're optimistic all the time, but then just say you're in a horrific accident or something, in that moment, you need to focus on the bad things to get out of it. You need to realize you're in a bad situation. All your neurochemicals are going to be firing to tell you that so you can get out of there. And that's in that moment really good. But then what we might see is that if that negativity bias stays with you over a long period of time after the event, and that's what we see with people with PTSD or trauma, then you're not able to go back to optimistic functioning. So negativity bias does still have a place, and we need that, and we can't just be completely optimistic all the time, and there's systems in the brain that can switch us towards both. I guess with creativity and people who have decided to have a creative life, I think there has to be exactly this level of optimism because you are deciding to put things out into the world. I don't know because I'm not an artist, so I'm curious what you think, but if you are creating art from a place of pain, but you're still putting that out there, I guess there is the belief that that's going to be a good thing for people to consume and to understand. And if maybe the pain was too much, you wouldn't put it out into the world.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I guess somewhat recently, in the last year or so, I've got back into painting.
Yeah.
And painting has been something that I haven't been doing it for the longest while, for about more than 15 years. Painting for me was my first passion of creative expression, but it was coming from a place of angst. So I guess like probably in my late teens, early 20s, I was painting a lot of, I guess it was still abstract work, but it was coming from, a lot of anger, and it just exacerbated that emotion. Like it kept me in that. So I had a really bad relationship with that practice. So that was primarily the reason why I actually just stopped. I just didn't enjoy doing it. It was an outlet, but it just heightened that emotion. So I stopped, and now doing through this podcast, I've just been inspired to get back into it, and I'm doing it now. And initially, I just went back and started doing the works. Say, for example, these two pieces here, they look very similar to the works I was doing before. I don't know if anyone could even distinguish the difference between the two of them. I'm not sure. But they come from a different place.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so I haven't gone back. Someone did ask me whether or not I've gone back and had a look at them. I haven't, but that's not for any other reason other than I just haven't. But I do wonder whether or not it will be obvious, if you can, if not obvious, then maybe just if you could feel it, if you could pick it up.
Yeah, in the expression of
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually don't know where that was going, but I think it was just more from using that art as an outlet of both the good and positive and negative. But funnily enough, that like I was saying, that the expression, or I guess just the output, doesn't seem to be too far removed from one to the other, even though it's very polarizing, the inspiration behind it.
And I suppose the other thing is, when we're thinking about optimism, it doesn't, so there's optimism is obviously associated in popular culture with a lot of emotion. So it's like, oh, we're happiness and all these things. But if we come back to the behavior and the bias, it doesn't always look like being happy all the time. So you can still be making decisions and engaging in the world, but you're not always completely happy. So in terms of a creative, and they might be like, well, I'm not optimistic, but their behaviors might show otherwise.
That's interesting. So you can separate the behavior from the emotion.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're mutually exclusive, or is there
Well, there is. So they're not they're not exclusive, but because the bias is just operating in terms of how we're processing information and our behaviors, that can continue on a timescale that's happening in moments when you're still feeling sad.
Oh, okay. So then there'll be some tendencies that you will just naturally kind of just apply, I guess, to some methods and processes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've thought about this, about how, about just being more pragmatic with problems because, and this is what I was saying about how a situation is a situation, neither good nor bad, until you apply your own lens to it. And, that I'm constantly trying to stay in a more solution focused, like just accepting of a situation as what it is, and then how do you adapt and apply to that. So in the process, even in creating, so many things go wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Because especially now when I'm trying to apply a new practice and trying to, I guess, find out all the intricacies, how I want to apply my practice and my processes, and because it's all new. There is a level of excitement, but it's also really daunting. But there's the optimism that it's going to go right, and things inevitably go wrong, right? So then in that, you have to then think, fuck, what am I going to do here? And then, you're then exposed to a new situation that you didn't expect. And then now you have to try to remedy that. So I guess that's where the optimism is, right? Like that's not how it made me feel because it's like, oh, fucking hell.
But
now
you kept going.
Yeah. And I guess that was the thing. Like I've just told myself that you just got to find a way. I think that's really cool. I do like that idea of separating the action from the emotion.
Yeah.
So optimism is more aligned with the action.
Because when we think about the work in the non-human animals, so emotion in animals is different. We don't know a lot about how animals experience emotion. So we see these behavioral bias in the way that they do these tasks and the way that they engage in their environments. And you can manipulate that if you put them in negative environments and things like this. But if we see that behavior in animals, then that's not so tightly linked to the feeling of just feeling happy all the time. Because would we say that you see optimism in bees? Would we say a bee experiences happiness? We don't know. So if you think of optimism in that sense, that really is just the behavior, and that's what we see in people.
Right.
And then, of course, that does then link. There's some, if you are feeling happy, there is some link to the behavior of optimistic engagement, but it's not like it's just this one concept.
Yeah. I don't know if fear is the right word, but I guess that animals will definitely be acting from a place of fear as well, right? They're largely more reactive to their survival instinct than we are. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion about in fear in particular. So we measure fear in animals a lot, and that's exactly right. We link it back to there's a lot of neuroscience linking back to the survival circuits in the brain. So just these like really ancient survival circuits of I need to get out of a bad situation, and we label that as fear. But then when we think about fear in humans and the emotion that's associated with, it's not so clear about if the animal is experiencing that emotion in the same way. So in humans, we will have that same survival circuit, but the way it shows itself or transpires in our emotions is going to be different to the way that the animal experiences it.
We probably have an infinite number of more options that we can tap into when we're experiencing that.
Yeah.
Like in terms of just our actions and behaviors.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wonder then, from a creative standpoint, that linking to, I know that there are definitely going to be some people that express and create out of fear. And there's so many degrees to that now that I think about it, right? Like in terms of survival, of just trying to, where's the next meal coming from?
Yep,
right?
yeah.
And the only thing I know how to do is to create.
Yep.
So how do I link the two? Or, that there's a feel of just the world coming down around you. What else can I do to alleviate at least just the weight of that? I wanted to ask you, in terms of creativity, and I mean the actual act of creativity, I will generally separate them into two large camps. There is almost like there's one that's a light bulb moment, right? Where we have this spark of inspiration, this idea that comes to us and it starts pinging in your brain. And then there's the act of actually creating, the making and the execution. I imagine those two, when looking under EEG, would look vastly different. Have you looked at that?
So, yeah, this is such a good question. So that just when an idea comes to you like that, that's called an aha moment. So that's actually what the scientific name for it is.
Cool.
And it's this thing, as artists, you would probably experience where it's like all of a sudden it just comes to you. And there's lots of stories about famous art that happened after someone had a dream, or apparently when they discovered that DNA was the double helix, that happened because they were driving on the road, like a windy road, and then all of a sudden there was this aha moment. And there's a lot of research into, well, how does that aha moment work? And so even if we're not consciously aware, so when we're thinking about things, there's things that we're consciously aware of, but our brain's also processing things that we're not aware of. And that's why sleep is really important, and that's why things can happen in dreams. And with these aha moments, there's this nice idea that maybe sleeping and dreaming is important for it, because when we're sleeping and dreaming, our prefrontal cortex, which is applying more reasoning, is not as active. So you can have more creative ideas that your brain won't judge. So you'll have some, it's like if you have a dream and there's crazy things going on and your brain's like, oh, this is all normal, then you can have this idea and it comes to you and it's not judged so much. So then the brain's like, oh, okay, no, this is a good idea. And then you might wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I've now solved this problem in this new kind of way. So that's an aha moment. And yeah, when it comes to what the brain is actually doing in those moments, it's not so clear, but one of the things is it is tied to emotion. So often if someone has an aha moment idea, they can form more emotional attachment to it than they can if you do just like traditional, I'm thinking, I've solved the problem. So aha moments are also very tied to how people feel when they get connected to a conspiracy theory or something.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
they've got it. Okay.
And it's this, and a lot of that is tied to the emotion of that thing. And it's interesting because aha moments can lead to things like the discovery of the structure of DNA, amazing art, but then also these conspiracy theories. And it's like, well, how do we then say what aha moments are quote unquote good and what are quote unquote bad? And that's because if the brain is doing the same things to get to those, that's a complicated question.
Because we have a propensity to want to be right.
Exactly. Yep.
And at whatever cost.
Yep. And
Right. And then we will hold on to that steadfast, right? Like we don't want to be proven wrong.
Yep.
So we would rather hold on to lies. Right.
And if you have
I didn't realize that they were linked, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and if you have that emotion attached to it. So even if I'm doing a coding problem, I might work on it all day, and then what I do is just go on a walk and not think about it. So I'll go down the Merry Creek, I'll just think about nothing, and then I come back and it's solved.
Just let your brain digest it a little bit.
And that's, so what I think is cool about that is it can do something, so mathematically based to solve that problem, and also so creativity, art and this can come from that same process as well. I think that's really cool.
I heard that a lot. I think like Einstein, he really relied on separating himself from that, even just having a nap. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so that's the aha moment. But then you can also just solve problems, as you were saying, in the way of just doing it. And that's when you're just constantly actively thinking about it and applying to it. And I think there's no way that's better than the other. And for some people, I'm curious actually in terms of the people who listen to your podcast and who are creatives, what their experience is. And I'm curious if some people have a lot of aha moments, some people might not have any, and neither is good or bad. It's just how different people solve different things.
I think that for the most part, creatively inclined people have both type moments, that the idea will come to them before they execute it, right? I say that, but then there are also going to be artists that just work on the fly, that are creating in the moment. So aren't even necessarily getting the aha moment. They're just kind of like they're conduits of whatever is happening and applying it, like how musicians can get out there and just riff and jam. And that to me just blows my fucking mind.
And there's another thing, well, and it's also so hard when we're thinking about how other people are doing things because we just have our experience of how we do it. So there's with mental imagery, so that's when what your brain imagines. Some people don't have that.
Aphantasia.
Yeah, and a lot of artists don't have that.
Really?
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Okay. Like a disproportionate amount?
Yeah.
Really?
And so when their act of putting something on the canvas is they don't have the mental image of it, but then they create this amazing stuff. I can't remember the list of artists that have it, but I was really shocked by that.
I would have thought it would be the other way around.
No.
Because a good friend of mine who has aphantasia, he does not have a creative bone in his body.
Okay.
He's an accountant.
Yeah.
Loves it.
Yeah.
Thrives in it. That's his joy. And I would have just assumed those two things would have been connected in that way, as in that you'll be more analytical if you aren't able to foster some kind of imagination.
Yeah, and also what's interesting is when we're trying to think about, and people with their mental imagery have different experiences of how vivid it is. So some people have really vivid mental imagery, some people have less vivid. There's a scale of it. So it's not a binary, you do what you don't. And it's very hard for us, depending on what your own experience is, to think about, well, if I didn't have that, what would my experience of creating a painting be? Because we actually can't imagine what it would be like to have no mental imagery if that's what we have.
Yeah. It might actually, now that you say it, probably be better because that if you're not going in with any sort of preconceived notion of what it should look like.
Then
Like when teaching my son how to draw, I'll explain to him, don't see the thing, like for example, that skull, don't see a skull and draw a skull. Look at shapes. You're drawing a series of shapes. So just try to see it more objectively, right? And then you'll be able to get something that's should be more one-to-one representative of what it is you're trying to draw. And even in some cases, if you're trying to draw a portrait, turn it upside down, right?
Yeah.
So that way you're not seeing, a face or the structure of the face. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. And I mean, I just wish we could have everyone in the room and ask them, but I'm curious if people don't have mental imagery, their experience of an aha moment. And
I can't.
Yeah.
Because I see like, all right, so if you're having these aha moments, there's going to be certain parts of your brain that are just fired and lit up. And this is not just exclusive to creative people. It's just problem solution. And the solution, I think that also like the more abstract the solution is, or even the simpler the solution is, then the more almost like gratifying that aha moment would be. If it's well within your grasp and it's like, oh my God, all I needed to do was this. But then when you're talking about the execution, where it would just be, I would liken it, I guess, like if the execution is something that's within your wheelhouse, it'll probably be something that's more meditative.
Yeah.
Right? Like more of a flow state kind of thing. Whereas like, I know that like right now I'm trying to, when creating my own paintings, I'm building the frames, and woodworking and all that is so foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
So every single step I'm like in it, right? Like just hyper focused, hyper vigilant with every action. So there's no real flow. So there's a lot of joy, but there's no flow. It's just hyper attentiveness. But I imagine that someone else that is an old hand, for them, it's just that they just feel just pure joy.
Yep.
In that. So I guess that just in terms of just the activity, and again, this is not going to be exclusive just to art. I'm just trying to get a better understanding of how these things can be applied to our practice of creating things that we do, and also how then you can then extrapolate that and take that outside of your art life, your creative life.
Yeah, and I think I guess when it comes to problem solving, we might think the best thing to do is to just work really, really, really hard on it. And I
Yeah.
suppose what we're kind of talking about here is that the brain actually doesn't work that way. And it's actually, it's like, can be the best thing to do if you're trying to solve a problem is step away. And the brain, like that is good for how your brain solves problems. And I think that that can feel counterintuitive, especially the way we're taught, like, you know, in school and just like work really hard and focus on all these things. And sometimes the best thing to do for your brain can be to go for a walk or do something different. And with the woodworking example, that's also a really nice thing of, you know, you'll go through this stage of really focusing and it's a lot of effort and your brain is having a lot of effort to do that. But as time goes on, that effort might move into a habit and then you might experience these more moments of flow state and joy when you do that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, like, I know that that's just going to be the way.
Yeah.
I know that that's just the process.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot, right? Like, I think about processes a lot and I think about just the different stages. And this is why neuroscience interests me so much, right? Just trying to get a better understanding of what is actually happening and not just in the art practice, but also just even sitting here, right? When I'm having conversations, I don't know if you find it the same way. It might be different because you don't really do many face-to-face ones, but just being able to converse like this and just riffing, there is a sense of flow. And there are times where like, I had to catch myself out when I'm in a conversation and everything just narrows in, almost like I'm about to black out. Right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had, you know, that feeling when your field of vision just narrows?
Yeah.
And I've had that, and I have to like just pull myself out of that, thinking, "Holy shit, what was that?" And that was when I just became like really just hyper intensive in that moment, and it's hard to explain what that sensation is like, But yeah, like to be able to tap into that as an energy source when creating is nice.
Yeah. When you had those moments of pure focus. So I have a good friend of mine and she is a neuroscientist who works on dissociation.
Mm-hmm.
Dissociation is when we feel, well, I mean, I guess we say it quite a lot, like, oh my God, I'm dissociating right now, which is when we feel like things might not feel real, or we feel like we're in a movie, or there's something like a bit disconnected to ourselves. I was just wondering, when you have that feeling of like everything is so like that, do you feel like you're dissociating a bit?
Yeah, I you know, I kind of, depends on the degrees. I feel dissociated like all the time.
So that's so interesting, because with dissociation, that again, I guess everything, I guess what's the answer to so much in neuroscience is everyone is unique.
Yeah.
So everyone experiences things so differently. So some people never experience dissociation.
I don't know. Is it dissociation, or I could just be oblivious? Maybe I always thought it was just me being oblivious.
And it could be, no, it could be like you're just someone who experiences dissociative states more often. Yeah,
better or worse though, because there have been some times where I have been not so accepting of reality, but I say that in I guess like this is going back to what we're talking about, objectively good or objectively bad, where there were situations where I was probably overestimating the positivity of a situation where it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And just kind of moving through that, and it didn't turn out fine.
Yeah.
But then having to then reconcile with this outcome, which I didn't anticipate, and be like, oh, fuck, okay.
Yeah.
That's not how I thought it was going to turn out.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, is a form of dissociation.
Yeah, and not being aware of that. So, yeah, I guess with all the stuff that we're talking about, I think there's this maybe misconception that the brain is doing things in a simpler way than it is, and our experience that we all have is more similar than it is.
Yeah.
But it's so complicated and it's so messy, which I love. I think that's so beautiful. And we know so little about it. And there's so much to learn. And one of the things in my work with computational psychiatry is the idea, if we use these algorithms, everyone can be individual because you can all have different models.
Oh, of course. Okay.
And so the idea is that you're accepting baseline that we assume everybody is different,
Yeah.
which traditionally, especially when we're thinking about psychiatry, we assume that there's people just in these different groups.
Personality types.
Yeah. But it's like, no, we all can experience things so differently. And that's okay.
Yeah. So the disassociation then will link back to what you were saying about maybe just potentially overestimating or positively estimating a situation or negatively estimating a situation. So I guess that in terms of disassociation is that there's always going to be degrees of that. Like there's because like the average or the aggregate doesn't really exist.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're always going to be somewhat disassociated from what is actually happening.
Yeah, and our brain can't take in all the information that we're exposed to at once. It just can't. Like we're not, and that's why we have attention mechanisms, so we can decide what to focus on and what not. And then that comes back to when we're talking about processes. And I guess one of the things is, okay, so we're talking about all this, optimism is good for you, how do we do all these things? And one of those things that we do have control over, and a really big thing, is where we put our attention.
And then you get to choose that, right?
You do.
Yeah.
And that also depends on the environment you're in. So not everyone is in an environment where there's good things to attend to. But if you are in one where there is, we decide where to focus our attention, and then that decides what our brain is learning.
Yeah, and then that will come back to the choice that you have of whether or not you want to be optimistic or pessimistic.
Yeah.
That's a choice?
Yep. So optimism, a third of it is genetics, a third of it is environmental factors, and a third of it is we don't know. So some people just will have genes that mean it's harder for them to be optimistic.
When you say genetic, what is it in our genes, or is it just behaviours that have been passed down?
Yeah, so these are such good questions, and I wish we had better answers. Genetics kind of is both. So you probably have heard of epigenetics, which is when we decide, well, our genes can be methylated, which means that they're switched on or off. And the experiences that our parents have had, our grandparents have had, their grandparents have had, ends up switching and methylating genes on and off. So that gets passed down to us, and then that's expressed. So there's things that have happened in our family's past that we will have memorized, I guess, is a good way in our genes. But then there's also just genes that some people just have and not have. So it's not even a matter of turning them on or off. You just have that gene or you don't.
Height.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's genes that have been found to contribute to optimism. Environmental factors. So you're a dad, so you may notice that little children are so optimistic because they will go out, fall over, not care, keep going. So children have such high optimism, and that's how they learn about their world.
And that really does mean that we are born naturally optimistic. And then we're taught pessimism.
So that natural optimism that children have does need to go down a little over time, because they don't really learn from bad things at all. That's why they're, running around and falling over and keep going. But if you're exposed to too much negativity in your childhood or development, then your optimism goes down to pessimism, and that's not adaptive.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say about inherited and genetic. I was speaking with Drew Funk, and his episode just went out, and we've been conversing a bit about this because he is also Chinese Malaysian.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we spoke about was how when I moved here to Australia when I was 4, so in 88, and I had then from that point on as a method of survival and integrating with Australian culture and Australian norms, I kind of really pushed back away from a lot of my Chinese and Malaysian heritage. So much so that I've not removed a divorce from it, but I've had a bit of a rebellious streak. So I was very anti that as a way of just now being pro-Australian. I guess I saw it as very binary instead of seeing how I could just work the two together. It was in the 80s, man, you know, and kids sucked as well. So I now was talking to him about how I find it really hard to accept compliments, where like it just, to me, it felt disingenuous. Not saying that they were, it just felt disingenuous. And he understood that, and he sent me a video of someone who was British Chinese explaining culturally why that is the way. So, and he took it all the way down where he was explaining that when Chinese are given a compliment, they feel, not to say not worthy of it, but they will just say, no, like just kind of like push back on it, because they also don't want to accept that they have reached their potential. It's like, this isn't good enough, I can do better. And because I didn't really understand or remove myself from the Chinese culture, I didn't understand that personality trait of mine. I just accepted it as that's just what it is. And now I understand that it's actually tied to my heritage and my culture that's generational.
That's so interesting. So this is something that just has been in your family, but because you were, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and I just learnt this like the other week.
Wow.
And then because of that, is kind of like it's really got me interested in wanting to learn more about the Chinese heritage, just to better understand me. Because I've been, I guess like, when I look at people that are still very tied to their heritage, I've often questioned why. And it's always been like, why haven't you are in a position to carve out your own path, to choose your own values. And that's what I felt I've been doing. But all along, I'm still very much at the mercy of all of that without realizing. So there's just been this separation that I'm now just trying to reconcile with and trying to see where the tether actually is. So wanting to learn more about Chinese culture, just to better understand where a lot of my personality traits come from, how I've inherited that.
And that's so interesting because, yeah, as you said, not, growing up and being like, oh, I just need to focus on being Australian, but then still those values were in your genes. Yeah, it's so interesting.
So I think that there's a lot that we are still very susceptible to that we don't understand. But I do feel as though, actually, I had a point that I was going to link to, I guess, just to being more optimistic and it being a choice. But then, so I guess that the link to that is that having that rebellious streak as well, that was a choice. And so much so that it just became almost like a personality trait of mine. And I hated it. Like, because I just felt tense the whole time, right? Like I was almost like the antithesis of everything else that was happening, to the point where I'm like, I don't even know if I hold that particular opinion, or am I just being argumentative?
Yeah.
So then that is now a swing back towards wanting to be more optimistic and wanting to be more proactive and learn from other people. So the people sitting across from here, and then trying to be more open to the fact that you don't know shit, man. So take something.
Yeah.
And you don't have to agree, but just take it in, let it just mull in your brain a little bit, and let your brain do its thing and work out what it wants to keep and what it wants to discard, and seeing how you can just traverse your way through life that way.
What an amazing mindset.
But that was by choice, right? That's something that I had to be, I guess, just bring to the front of mind and being like, dude, you're actually a bit of an asshole.
Yep.
You might want to just check yourself.
Yeah.
And it was that whole, like, I heard somewhere this quip, someone said that if it stinks like shit everywhere you go, it's probably time to check your shoes.
Yeah,
like,
That's a good one.
Yeah, I love that. So, for the friends that I have that are just constantly complaining about shit, I'm like, why do you think that is?
Can I just run to the toilet?
Go for it.
And then I was thinking maybe I should also speak about the rats and psilocybin.
Oh yeah! Oh my god, the mind warping thing. We
I gotta talk about the psychedelic rats.
Psychedelic rats. Let's talk about psychedelic rats.
Yeah, so one of the big studies I did on Optimism was looking to see how psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, increased optimism. So magic mushrooms, probably lots of people know now, are being looked at as treatments for depression.
Mm-hmm.
And in Australia, we're like one of the first places to do clinical trials. It's all very exciting, but we don't really know the mechanisms behind how it works yet very well. There's some suggestions, but we're not super clear. But then again, lots of drugs that we use to treat depression we're not super clear on. But because psilocybin is a very powerful drug, we want to try and know as much about the mechanisms as possible. So one of the big issues with psychedelic drug trials, as we probably all have seen, there's that New Yorker cartoon, is that if you get the placebo.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a study and you're like, oh, I'm on the psilocybin magic mushroom study, and you don't feel anything, you're like, okay, I got the placebo. So it's really important that we have good placebo conditions in drug trials so we know actually what the drug effects are.
Like warping walls.
Yeah. Because placebo effects can be very strong. So one way we can do that is test psychedelic drugs in animals. Because we assume, hopefully, that the rat doesn't have an expectation that it's going to have a psychedelic trip, so we can have good control. So we were interested in what are the long-term effects after you take the drug. What are the long-term effects on behaviour after that?
How long are these long terms?
Well, in the rats, we measured the behaviour for 2 weeks. So you can think of that at about 6 months in a human.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what we did is we gave the rats psilocybin, and they get a dose that you can tell that they're having the full effects. So there's ways that you measure to make sure you know that they're, I guess, tripping. And then after that, so now the rats are no longer high, we measured their behaviour for 14 days after.
Mm.
And what we did is we gave them this task in their home cage. So they're in their home, and they can decide whether to just stay in their cage and chill out or do nothing, or do this task where they can have a chance of getting a reward. But they also have a chance of getting a loss. Mm-hmm. So we can think of that translating to, are we going to stay at home where we're safe and nothing bad will happen, or do we want to go outside? It's a chance of a reward, but also a chance of a bad thing happening. And what we found was over the 14 days, the rats that were given the psilocybin, they were getting more rewards overall. So they were getting more wins. And the reason for that was they were just doing the task more. So they weren't better. They weren't, it wasn't that they were smarter or anything like this. They were just engaging more with the task.
What was the loss?
So nothing. So they could poke this thing, and if they did the wrong action, they just got nothing.
Right.
So it's not a super bad loss. So the idea is that the psilocybin meant that they engaged just in this task more. So it's like, okay, well, how do you know that's optimism? Because it's like, that's just more engagement. How do we know that's optimism? So I fitted these computational algorithms I've been talking about, and it was really cool because what we found was that the rats that were given the psilocybin, how they updated their beliefs about the world changed. So they learnt more from good things and less from bad things. Mm. And when they got a bad thing, it affected them less. And we can see that through the maths that came out of the model.
I think it affected them less from the negative outcomes.
Yeah.
That's a big one, right? Because that's also a choice, right? Like how what you take from that situation. I'm still really baffled that we learn more from good things. Because I would have thought that if we have a predisposition to be optimistic, means that we're already forecasting a positive result.
Yeah.
So if we get the positive result, then it should be deemed a neutral result.
Because it's what we expected.
What we expected.
Yeah. These are all really good and challenging questions.
Sorry.
Like, that's really good. No academic has ever asked me that before.
Whereas a negative one, then you decide what you take away from that because it's an unexpected outcome. I would assume an unexpected outcome. Or unless a bad outcome came, it's like, oh, I expected that. Well, then is that a positive outcome in that case?
Yeah, so I guess with the so if we can think about the rats, even though they expected, so this comes out in the maths, even though they expected to get wins, still, when they got one, they updated their belief about the world more than when they got a loss,
Okay.
even though they had that expectation.
Right. Yeah. I look back at just, our life journey.
Yeah.
Every one of us, we can look back at some of the hardship that we've gone through. And I don't know about you, but I look back at a lot of them with fondness.
Yep.
And I remember viscerally how it felt to be in those situations. And I really appreciate, I can look back at it and like smile about it as well. And because through, I guess, like being almost 43 now, if I was to ever run into a situation like that, I guess I'll have the tools to better equip myself to manage with those situations. Almost like to the point where if I get into a situation, I know that in years to come beyond that, or whatever length of time, I'm going to be able to look back at that situation with fondness. So why not start gearing myself towards that now? So it's almost like reframing what that negative outcome is going to be. And I personally, and it could be because that whole not being able to accept compliments. So positive outcomes is like, yeah, it is what it is, but negative outcomes is where I feel there's more friction and there's more growth opportunity from that.
I'm at the moment doing this online study to measure people's optimism. I'm going to get you to do it, and we can see how optimistic you are.
Yeah, sure. There's this really great, I don't want to call him an influencer because he's more than that.
Yeah.
He was originally an artist agent, a music producer, artist agent. And his name's Charlie Rocket. Have you heard of Charlie Rocket? You would love him.
Okay.
He'd be an interesting one for you to study. He has this philosophy called win streak.
Okay.
So it's about have you heard of this?
Is this no, you explain it.
Yeah, how it's just about trying to find the positive in any outcome. So for him, it was more like, I guess, if you can train your brain to look for wins, then you're naturally going to be inclined to see them everywhere, right? It's almost like the rose-colored glasses.
Yep.
So he has this thing where it's like, I just can't lose. I just can't lose because I just see wins everywhere. So it's a matter of just, I guess, like reframing a negative situation, or not even reframing a negative situation. It could just be finding a neutral situation and giving it a positive spin, and to take something out from it and seeing how your life could be like, is a small win here, small win here, small win here, and you're just compounding the small wins to the point where like, I just can't lose.
Yep. And that definitely is connected. And I suppose if we're thinking about, so some people are really lucky because they have the ability to make those choices and do that. But then some people, if you do have depression, you actually can't help it because the way your brain is sending different signals is just stuck and it can't do that. So that's why, for the example with the psilocybin example, if you're someone who was depressed and you just were so stuck in that, and these behavioral interventions weren't helping you, that's when something that can actually modify what's happening with your serotonin and stuff that can reflect to help loosen up some of these beliefs and give you the opportunity to become more optimistic and learn more from these wins. That's when these drugs can be very powerful.
Have we found that psilocybin, that we are more, I guess, susceptible to the effects of it? Because with antidepressants, hit or miss in a lot of cases, and it's sometimes the effects aren't even immediate. And then if they are immediate, it doesn't necessarily, it just lowers the baseline of everything. Where is there more of a, I guess, like a holistic acceptance cognitively? I guess, like, are we all taken to it in the same way?
Yeah, actually no, but that's not a bad thing. So with antidepressants, the stats are a third of them work for people the first time. A third of people, they need to go through different ones and then they find one that works. And a third of people they don't work for. So we call that treatment-resistant depression. And there was a study that came out recently that found psychedelics have the same effectiveness. So there'll be a group of people it works for, a group of people who will need it a few times, and a group of people it doesn't work for. Also ketamine, that's a really big new treatment for depression, and it's the same thing, which is really interesting. A third of people right away it works for, amazing. A third of people need to have it a lot of times, and then a third of people it doesn't work at all. But this doesn't mean that these drugs then aren't really powerful. It's just we need to get more information earlier on so we can know who things will work for and who they won't work for.
What's the physiology? What's happening?
So with the psilocybin, you get a big increase of serotonin. So what we thought with the rats was they have this big increase in serotonin, which means that they can flexibly change the way they engage in their environment. So there's this trade-off when we make decisions between exploring and exploiting.
Right.
So exploiting is just doing things that we've done before. So we learn something, it works for us, and we just exploit that. Exploring is when we try new things that we haven't done before. So maybe you are hungry and you go to a restaurant, and just say if you're exploiting, you go to that same restaurant every single time. It does the job. You get food. You're not hungry anymore. But if you're exploring, you might be like, oh, I'm going to go try this new restaurant. I'm going to come to the west side. I'm going to go to the north side of Melbourne, try some new places, and we're exploring new things. And the increase in serotonin, and this is what we've proposed, is, so I'm not saying this is a complete ground truth fact. The idea could be that the increase in serotonin loosens up so you can go more into the exploration.
Okay.
So if you imagine if you're someone who's depressed and you're just exploiting the same things, and that might be staying at home, doing the same things, it opens you up to feel like you can now go and explore a new range of actions that you can do in the world.
And that's just purely serotonin.
Other things are going on, but that's one of the main things that how that drug works.
Right. Because there is obviously a link between, I guess, psychedelics, not just psychedelics, but any cognitive warping substance and creativity.
Yeah.
It just removes or relinquishes a lot of the safety rails.
Yeah.
And it gives you, permission, or doesn't give you permission, but it gives you permission just to explore and to try new things. I wonder, how much of that is actually just tied to our survival as a species?
The explore, exploit?
Well, even just accidentally stumbling upon these, psilocybin, for example, because it's just there, right? It's always been there. It's been there longer than we've been there. And it does, it's like, I've had this conversation before with Jack Rowland, another artist, about how it's just so wild that we have these things growing from the ground that has its own sort of network of a whole system, underground
mycelium. System. We love.
Yeah. And we have these particular receptors in our brain that react to that in this particular way. How that came about is literally mind-boggling, right? And how things have just aligned for that to happen, that it's almost like that it has to have played a bigger part than just mushrooms, right? It has to have some kind of, why would we have that in us if not to be utilized?
So my partner's actually, he's a mycologist. So he's,
cool.
Yeah, so maybe he should come on.
Cool.
Yeah, you guys would get along, I think. And so, there's a lot of discussion in science and evolution about exactly these kind of questions. I don't feel like I know enough to comment, but I think biology is extremely beautiful. And everywhere we look in it, there's patterns and we can find these dynamics. But why this all came to, these are really big open questions.
Yeah, and then it just opens the world of philosophy and
exactly.
Yeah, and even just the realm of space and time and
so much. But I think also what I do just want to say in terms of the psychedelics, which I think this is important, is so there's a lot of hype around it, around, this is going to be, change everything and everyone. And I think it's really good to remember that it's just the same efficacy as antidepressants. So some people it won't work for. And I think this is always good to remind ourselves, because there's no magic trick to fix everything. There's no one shot that will just help everyone, unfortunately. And And so a lot of my research when I'm doing the modeling is working out not just who these things are good for, but who they're not good for, and
Right.
what else we can find that will help them. So if you are maybe someone who already has beliefs that are quite flexible and you take psychedelics, that might put you in a state now where you have more delusions, and that could be a negative outcome of the drug. So it's always important to remember that there's these side effects as well. And that's one of the things that I'm interested in. I work with she's a doctor doing her PhD. She's a medical doctor doing her PhD at the moment with psychedelic therapy. And she's really interested in using meditation as a way to ground the therapy. So you're less at risk of developing these more delusional beliefs. So there's a lot of research going into like, well, how can we constrain that to make sure it's safe?
Yeah, I guess that there's also different dosage levels are going to affect you in different ways, right? Like
Yeah,
how much do you
completely.
want to almost like open the floodgates?
Yeah.
And I guess that if all you're trying to do is just to alleviate some of the constraints, then microdosing, right? I guess that's how you guys are going to be. Is that the
No, so actually what's so interesting is there's not really any research on microdosing. All the research that I've been involved with and a lot of the research, clinical research is, I don't know if they call it macrodosing, but just like a large dose. And I think there was a paper recently that said we need to start thinking about microdosing because so many people just are using it themselves.
Yeah.
But the research hasn't started to look at that yet. But yeah, in terms of the clinical space, it really is these large doses.
Jeez. I would have thought that you would have started with
Yeah,
microdosing.
no, it's like really large doses, but you're with a therapist. So you sit with a
Yeah.
psychiatrist. Yeah.
So, you know how you were splitting everything up to thirds?
Yeah.
There's going to be, I guess, like, and we talked about some of the predispositions and just how we're just genetically inclined that way. There are some things that we are going to be, I guess, like, let's just say holistically, is there things that we can say holistically we, as a species, more inclined towards or opposite of, right? So, like, for example, that just through evolution, there are certain things that we have been avoiding, right? Just because we just know that is just not safe. It's not a safe practice. So, if we see, actually, this is a good segue. So, a good example would be there are some berries that are like tiny and red, and we look at that and be like, no. So are there certain things that, even though we are very much individual, there are things that we holistically just all predisposed to?
Yeah, that's such a good point because I've been going on and on about how individual we are, but
Yeah.
of course there's like baseline survival things. So a good example is our body temperature.
Ah, yeah.
That's not an individual
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
We
yeah.
all need to maintain homeostasis at the same body temperature. So that's a good one. Yeah, poisons, where there's some things that just, there's no individual response. It's just a poison. So yeah, I guess I've been saying we're all individual, but there's a whole range of things that just because of how we need to fundamentally survive, we all need food.
Mm-hmm.
We all need water. So these are things that aren't individual. Yeah.
Because you have a background in color cognition,
Yeah.
right? So would I be correct in saying that is how we perceive color and how that affects us emotionally, psychologically?
So my background in color is not so much on the emotions, it's how we perceive it.
How we perceive it.
So
As in wavelengths?
our experience of it. So all of my research that I've done has had this same theme of being interested in the fact that there's some sort of asymmetry and bias in a lot of the things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I've always found that so interesting because whatever we're doing is working. And why is it that we're better off having these biases or asymmetries in how we understand the world? So I did a lot of work on causal reasoning because there's some causal reasoning problems we can never get right. We always get them wrong. And it's like, well, obviously we can causal reason because we're here now. And if we were really bad at it, we wouldn't be able to survive. And I think those things are so interesting because it's like these things that are happening in the world. We can't understand them for whatever reason. We don't know why, or we judge them differently. Yet here we are. And I've always just found that so fascinating. So I did a lot of causal reasoning. And then I was...
When you say how we survive, do you mean like over the couple 100,000 years of human existence?
Or even our individual lives. Like, we have to be good at solving things and understanding and reasoning about the world, or we wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, okay.
So causal reasoning, we have to, if we have these tricks on how we do it, they have to tell us something about the structure of reality, or I wouldn't be able to do things like get here.
Yeah.
So I've always thought that was so interesting. And then I started to look at colour. And colour there's this interesting thing about how we perceive colour, and we have this asymmetry in how we understand it. And so if I show you, so one way we can study experience is this thing called just rating how similar objects are. So a big thing in consciousness research is, well, how will I ever know what your experience is? Because you'll describe it to me, but I don't have access to what your experience is. That's the big thing. Well, how do we do it? There's one method of doing it. Well, what if we just rate how similar objects are? So we could rate all the objects, we could create some sort of structure, and we could at least see the structure of how you perceive things. Mm-hmm. That won't get to the actual, it's called qualia, that's the name of it, like of your experience, and that's like that actual feeling. But there'll be some sort of structure. So maybe we can do that. Thought, okay, this is kind of cool. And there was this research where we were getting people to rate how similar they found two colours. So you see red and then you see orange. It's like, how similar are these two colours? And what was this amazing thing was you had an asymmetry, I mean people, in how you experience the colour depending on what you were shown first. So if you were shown red then orange, you might say they're more similar than if you were shown orange and then red.
Oh, okay.
So what does it mean to have an asymmetry in experiencing colour? Like, that's crazy. And then, because normally what you would do is I would get all these judgments from you about how you perceive colour, and we would put a structure, like you can imagine a multi-dimensional structure where all the colour, and I think this is, imagine like a 3D colour wheel. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to get at. So do people perceive colour the way we would structure it in a colour wheel? And it's like, well, actually they don't. And then how can we make a model of this? Because if there's an asymmetry in how you see one and the other, that means the two lines aren't symmetrical between your perception of them. And this is where it gets a bit wacky. So one way we can model it then is, rather than using traditional geometry, you can use quantum maths. Mm-hmm. So then I used quantum maths to create a model of how we experience, how you perceive and rate colour.
Okay.
So I know that I feel like this is getting crazy.
No, that's cool. So it's not linear.
Exactly.
So what does it look like?
So quantum maths sounds complicated. It's not that complicated. Rather than when you have two different points, so if you imagine you have point X and point Y, and just imagine it's on a road, so you'll start there at point X, you go to point Y. It's like one individual line, and that's how you measure the distance. In quantum maths, what you do is you have a series of, they're called vectors, but imagine just a series of arrows pointing in 3D space. Mm-hmm. I hope this is...
Yeah. I'm a good visualizer.
Cool. Yeah. I hope everyone has mental imagery. And then the way you measure how similar two points are is that you project one point onto the other. Mm-hmm. And because of the way the arrows are in space, you get different overlaps depending on what projects first. So if I project I just say arrow 1 onto arrow 2, given the way they are in space, they may overlap heaps. But if I project arrow 2 onto arrow 1, the way they are in
Right.
space, they overlap less.
Yeah, okay.
So then what we can do is we can put the colors in this space to map how people were saying how similar they were.
So what does that tell us?
Yeah, such a good question. Yeah, what? It suggests, so one of the claims is maybe our brain implements these quantum, it's a field called quantum cognition.
Yeah.
And the field says that our brain uses quantum methods to understand the world. That's
Okay.
one of the claims. This is different. There's also a whole world of quantum theory of consciousness, and that's a different thing. That's saying that consciousness is quantum, but this is different. This is saying we still have our brain structure. It's still processing things, but it's processing things by using quantum models.
So these quantum models, and this could be me misunderstanding it.
That's okay. It's complicated. I feel like, oh God, I'm...
No, that's okay, because I understand that, we have physics as we understand
Yeah.
everything, right? And quantum will just be things that are sub that, where it breaks all the rules. And quantum computing is essentially the process in which we are able to then measure those quantum things. Would that be right?
So quantum is that other level, and the quantum and the different rules, exactly.
Yeah.
So what I'm explaining when I'm talking about this quantum structure is rules that are usually applied to that level. So on that level, if you were measuring the distance between two objects, that's how you would use it. Whereas in our level, you use the distances as we know. So that's exactly right.
Right, okay, yeah.
Quantum computing, so that's kind of a different... it all gets... And I also feel like the word quantum gets used in lots of different ways. Quantum computing is the idea if we can use these... And I think we should leave this bit out.
Okay,
But I do know from startup people, the idea is that you have a structure of atoms, and you just remove one. You can remove one atom, and the power of that, it's called a qubit. That's what quantum computing is. And they just need to be able to do that process. And that's where the tech is at then trying to work out how to do that process.
If you want to leave this bit out, then we can just go off on this tangent, because I saw this bit of this, who was the person that developed this quantum computer, and they don't fully understand where they're able to get the computational power from.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and the working theory is that they're able to take it from other worlds.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
Yeah, because they actually don't.
Yeah.
They don't know, and that is the best guess right now. Is that it is able to leap across things that we are not able to perceive and take energy
From...
other realms.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, what the fuck?
Quantum stuff's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, no, I do wonder though, when you say like how we perceive color and our relationship with color, like what's the significance of understanding that even in a day-to-day kind of practice?
So the idea is that if I'm trying to understand what your experience is, one way, because color is so fundamental to experience, if your structure, so if your quantum cognition structure of color is different to mine, that can just give us some insight to, okay, well then maybe our experience of the world is different.
Right. So there's no universal overlay when it comes to color relationships.
No, and I guess the assumption is that there was, and there isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think the assumption, maybe, I don't know if there was.
Not. Yeah.
Maybe not, because I know that there are some, and this is what I was asking, some predispositions, right? Like how that we will see certain things, how, and this is from, my background in branding, that certain colors, with an asterisk, certain colors elicit certain type of emotions, right? That we respond to them in different ways, like how we use red for stop, or red for urgency or warning, and how there's fast food restaurants use red quite a lot just to try to grab our attention and to get us to react or act with immediacy.
Yeah, and in nature, red is a color that elicits that.
Yeah, like
Things
stay
that are
away.
poisonous, blood, these kind of things.
Yeah, so I wonder whether like there's certain, I guess, like colors, or if it's universal or something that individually, and if there's a link to how we gravitate towards some and repelled away from some, if that's something that is individual or more general. But I guess like to what you're saying, that it is quite specific how we would react or how we would respond to certain colors.
Yeah, so things like red, I mean, these universal things in nature. I guess when one way we can think about this is that we can always go back to nature. So we're talking here about red lights and fast food things, and it's red, and then we think, okay, well, what function does red serve in the natural world and for animals? Well, I mean, not all animals see color, but for us as animals, I guess. And we think red is really a signal for us, like, to stay away. So that's lots of poisonous things are red. If we see blood, that's a warning sign of something that is bad.
But then culturally, in Chinese culture, it's a sign of prosperity and fortune. Whereas, like they would wear, at a funeral, wear white. Whereas, like in Western cultures, you wear black. So the relationship that we have with color is quite...
It's like very
complex.
Yeah. And have you heard of the Mary's Room thought experiment?
No, go on.
Okay, so because I think now when we're talking about color, we're talking about different aspects of it, and this is a nice thought experiment that gets at what the quantum model was trying to find. Also, now I'm thinking, well, red's also strawberries and they're good. So who knows? So there's this thought experiment that's very famous in philosophy called Mary's Room. And it's the idea that there's this scientist named Mary, and she's in a room with no color. But she has access to all the science on color. So she, and we'll use the color red. So she knows the word for the color red in every language. She knows all the properties of the color red with all the wavelengths and all the physics. She's read about everything that is red. So she is the expert on the science of red and everything you can know about red. But she's in a room that's just black and white. With all that knowledge, one day she leaves the room and she sees red. And nothing that she read about or understood prepared her for that experience. And that's what we're trying to understand.
Oh, right. Have you looked into synesthesia much?
That's when people... What's that one again?
It's almost like a cross stimulus. So where they would... I had it or have it.
Oh.
And it's nothing... I didn't even know of this thing until my 20s. And when I learnt about it in my 20s, like, oh my God, I've got this. Or at least have memories of where I associated numbers. And when I saw a number, colours would come to mind. I've had other people on that had, like, for some visual artists, had that. And I guess it depends on your inclination. There are musicians that I know saw colour when listening to music. I've had another one, Liam Sardea. He has a background in perfumery. And
cool.
Yeah, so he saw geometric shapes and colours when he smelt certain things. So it's just that cross-pollination and what things elicit when you think of something, I guess. Different senses or... So for me, it was just I had association with numbers and colour, and whether or not that would alter how we perceive colour and how we traverse through the world.
And these things, so like we were talking before about people with no mental imagery, and then the connection with colour and numbers. So people with these experiences are studied a lot in consciousness science because it's these really interesting examples of how someone experiences the world, and it's so different. So I can't imagine that at all.
Yeah, I guess you couldn't.
Like I cannot imagine And I had no idea what the experience is like for you. And what's so beautiful is you could sit here and explain it to me for the next 5 hours, and I would never understand.
Well, to give a really simple explanation is that when my son, Lennox, the one that just turned 10, when he was much younger, I think probably about 4 or 5, in his sketch pad, he had numbers, and next to them he had coloured blocks. And I knew, as soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what that meant.
Wow.
Yeah, and I asked him, I was like, what's this? Explain this to me. He goes, yeah, when I see these numbers, I see these colours. And I was explaining to him. So that's essentially what it is, right? Like, I can, the mental imagery, can you imagine? Can you, like, do you have a...
Yeah,
like
a very vivid mental... Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you imagine a number, and when I say imagine a number, let's just say number 1.
Yep.
It's not even just thinking of the concept of 1. It is the physical shape of 1. And then I'll have the number 1 in... For me, it's a slab serif font. I don't know why.
And it's a colour too?
The colour block is right next to it, like in a rectangle shape.
Wow.
And then but then strangely, when I think of a number, like a 2-digit number, it'll be, instead of seeing the number, it'll be 2 rectangle colour blocks right next to each other. That's what pops up in my, like literally 2 colour blocks. Yeah, that's what pops up in my head.
That is so cool.
But now I don't know if it's something that's just been conditioned, because as soon as I learnt of it, then now I don't know if I've just been reinforcing that.
Yep.
So, but like I was saying, when I did learn of it, I was able to flash back and think, oh my God, that's what that was.
And were there any meaning behind the numbers relating to different colours, or it was random, or?
I really don't know, because when I learnt of it was in my 20s, and I recall it was around about 8 or 10 when it came to mind. I don't know if there's any significance or anything, but it seems to have dissipated. But then I think that also ties very heavily into what you were saying earlier about how kids, that they move with this degree of optimism. And I've spoken about this a lot, learning like how to create like a child, right? And then as you get older, you put up certain guardrails. You can't do this, you can't do that, and then you spend much of your life trying to break through these rules that you've learned. Yeah. So I don't know whether or not that has been stunted, or whether or not that is just something that you will just naturally just kind of grow out and move away from anyway. I don't know, but. Yeah, that was just my particular experience with that.
You could be in consciousness studies.
Oh, let's do it. I'd be very curious to learn what's actually happening behind the scenes. And like I was saying, I'm able to identify there are certain traits and behaviours, but don't understand why. And I guess that this was a big part of why I wanted to have you on as well, was just to get a better understanding of what is happening when I'm doing certain things, and trying to better understand what mindset is the best approach with certain actions. And I guess like what I've done is that I've been trying my best to always remain positive, but it's good to know that there are times where like, no, dude, you really got to see that this situation is dire and deal with it like a dire situation.
Okay, good, because I was worried that maybe I didn't have any answers. So I'm glad that there's...
I don't know if that... I think, look, really, honestly, with this podcast, I think the answers come just from how however you take it in. I spend time reflecting on these conversations. Yeah. So because like when I'm in the moment, I'm just having a conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I go back and edit, I'm like, Jesus, actually there was a lot in there. Even and this was a lot of fun. There are conversations where it'll just feel like we're just chatting like friends. It's just about nonsense, and then I'm thinking, man, I don't even know if people are going to get anything out of this. And then I'll go back and listen to it, like there was so much juice in that conversation.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed this. I really thoroughly enjoyed just trying to see creativity, but from a different lens, a different perspective, and a peek behind the scenes of not just creativity, but I guess it's just how the idea, or just what is happening cognitively and emotionally when we are being creative, and how that snapshot also applies to different areas.
All different things,
different areas in life. I've been enjoying your podcast.
Cool.
I really love it. And this is what I've been saying. I think it serves a lot of people a lot of good by just looking adjacent to your direct interest, and trying to see what else is out there, because the topics that you guys cover, and I think that you you toe the line really well because it's obviously made for science people. Yeah. You speak with reputable scientists and neuroscientists, but it's explained in a way that is clearly not for the layperson. But if you really if you do have an interest in that particular topic that you guys cover, you are able to take something away from it.
Because I think that's the thing. Initially, it was we were aiming more for lay people, but then the other thing is that I think people understand more and are smarter than they give themselves credit for. If
they're willing just to relinquish and just take it in.
I think that's what I found. So it's been nice having people listen who don't have a science background, and it's like, well, this is really cool because you're keeping up with the latest neuroscience now.
Yeah.
And that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's getting, TikTok's great, but don't go there for information.
Yeah. So it's like you can get, so it's very enjoyable.
Yeah. So, look, on that note, Dr. Beth Fisher, thanks for joining us, and thanks for sharing all your information on, I guess, just the inner workings of the brain through a creative lens. And I'm going to share the information on your podcast because I do highly recommend people jump on that. And there's so many different things that you guys talk about that there's going to be a bunch that's going to interest the people that will listen to this for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's been so fun.
Yeah.
And it's been we spoke for ages.
Oh my God. That's been a while.